My name is Jim Stoddard. I served in the United States Marine Corps for 10 years um, as an intelligence analyst from 2003 to 2013.
So my name is Walter Wayne Napier III. I served in the U.S. Army. I was an infantryman. I served from 2006 to 2014.
So my name is Daniela. I got my history bachelor's in UCF, and I served in the Army for 5 years.
I was in high school when September 11th happened. I was a 11th grader, just starting my junior year. There was like a buzz, and I think when we got the second period is when we got the principal came on and made an announcement, and if we had TV in the classroom, the teachers were turning it on. TV was on, class ended, and everyone was running to get to the next classroom. Then a second one happens, and you're like, holy cow, this is something serious. I was in a classroom when the towers fell, saw them, on TV, on that live broadcast when they collapsed.
My dad was working nights at the electric company, so he was home that morning and he got a call from one of the lawyers' offices and said, "Are you watching this? You need to kind of turn on your news." So Dad turns on the news, and then he goes and he smacks me on the leg because I was sleeping in. He says, "Hey, you need to get up because history's happening right now, and this is important." So I got out of bed, and we kind of just sat there in the living room watching. The first tower had been hit. So at that point, they didn't really know what was going on. They didn't know if it had been an accident. They were like, something's going on. We know that and while we were watching, that's when we saw the second plane hit. So at that point, we were like, okay. And then we heard about DC and I think 93 over in Pennsylvania. So then it just started steamrolling.
I was 9 years old when 9/11 happened. And I remember that day because for me, it was a huge disconnect because our teachers didn't show us. Yeah, our teachers tried to kind of shield us, right? So for us, it was just a day that for whatever reason, everyone was being picked up from school. And I was 9 years old, so I put it together. I gauged, I was like, there was an attack in New York. But even then I didn't really understand. I was like, New York is so far away. Like, how does that affect us in Miami, And it wasn't until the news cycle started and everybody was talking about that I saw I think that was probably the first time as a kid that I understood that we were a whole nation.
It felt like it pushed everybody's personal stuff aside a little bit, and it became like, hey, how are you doing? Everybody okay? You have family up there? Oh my God, just all that talk and feeling that surrounded that day encapsulated, I feel like, everybody's thinking. Mm-hmm. That smaller stuff stopped mattering for a while, maybe 2-3 months, maybe even for some things.
A big difference, I would say, is I couldn't believe how quickly, kind of like COVID, it's the only thing I've ever seen to remind me of it, how quickly the country locked down. Like, nationwide, everything just stopped. Nobody was going to work, nobody was going to school, you couldn't fly anywhere. It's just like put the country on hold. I've never seen anything like that before or since until COVID, which we kind of seen that more recently again.
My parents were supportive. My mother was very hesitant and worried. My dad, I'm sure, was worried as well, but he was more. He was upset that he was too old. My parents didn't serve, but the generation of my grandparents did, particularly on my dad's side. His father, so my paternal grandfather, was in the Navy during World War II.
I'll say that I'd always thought about the military anyway. My dad was a soldier. My grandfather was a soldier. His dad was a soldier. So I had that a big military connection already. I think my dad was a little nervous about it because he was like, okay, now it's not just a peacetime army with potential conflict. Now we know he's going into conflict.
My dad did serve in the military in his country, Guatemala, but the service there's compulsory. My dad had to actually sign the waiver because I was 17 when I enlisted. And I remember he sat me down and my mom told him, don't sign it, because she was not going to sign it. And he sat me down and he just asked me, is this really what you want? You know, like, is this really what you want? And I was so sure. I was so sure. And if they didn't sign, I would have just joined when I was 18 anyway, you know?
Even though young people today, even into their early 20s, may not have witnessed 9/11, they are still very much living in a post-9/11 world. It might be most apparent when they go to the airport and having to take off their shoes or take off their belts and go through the whole security song and dance to get on their airplane. But you see it in other ways. You see it with the way our laws are constructed now, what their concerns are. Yeah, whether they know it or not, they're living it. They're still living in that. You can never. The whole idea of returning to normalcy, I think, is a fallacy. You can't ever get back to the way something was when something significant has happened. I think it's important for students to learn about September 11th, 2001, to better understand the world they're currently living in.
As far as thinking about 9/11, I think one of the important things that we really need to internalize that we have failed to do since probably Pearl Harbor. And 9/11 was just kind of a reminder, is that we're not invincible and we're not special. On the global stage, anything is possible, and especially in this era where we have nuclear weapons. We're not untouchable, we're not special. I think that's an important lesson when you look at 9/11, you think strategically, you think the American system, politics, however you want to take that educationally. It's important to realize who we are and that we're not untouchable. We've just been really lucky. It seemed that we were on a positive track prior to 9/11, of that you had almost faith in humanity. We were faith in the economy, faith in the politicians. That didn't necessarily mean they were great, but you believed more good than bad, I guess I should say. After 9/11, that has steadily declined, and I don't think we've recovered. So that kind of permeating fear that something's always on the verge of happening, that to me has been a major change that has never really gone away.
Like, as a historian and looking at everything and looking at the truly awful times that this country has persevered through, what I see is a heightening of fear, It's a heightening of fear, and which isn't to say the world is safe. It isn't for everyone, but it also is most of the time for most of us. I think that what I'm learning and what I hope to see in the future for our country is a lessening of that fear. It's like we were attacked, and we knew it could happen before Pearl Harbor had happened, but Pearl Harbor was a military base, even though we weren't in war, there was those, but this was so intentional, so to the heart of our people, that it was so civilian focused. It was unmatched, and it's hard to shake off that fear.
I just hope that you can see the world less black and white. So I think 9/11 created this, West versus East, anti-Muslim sentiment, that type of thing, and that doesn't help. Here we are 22 years later, and we're still dealing with the reverberations of that one day and how we reacted to it.
I do feel like people care more about the world, because they see it affects us even when we don't want it to.